I started researching on my own and started talking to some friends as well who were Shia, and they gave me a basic understanding of Shia Islam. So what I did is when I came to Islamic college, I started using the library very often, researching into the books and reading a lot of history. And I found out that Shia Islam for me was the right choice. It seemed logical, it seemed correct, and it seemed like what real Islam is. I really became interested in Islam when I was about 16, and that's when I regularly started praying, going to the mosque, and so I would say I was religious before I became Shia, and I think that's what actually led me to becoming Shia, because when I became religious I had so many questions that the local imams or my family couldn't answer. So I started looking for these answers in books, and that's when I actually saw that Shia Islam had more logical and better answers than Sunni Islam. And there wasn't always doubts, because there was a time when I was younger where I didn't really care about my religion. I was just Muslim by name. But as I started becoming more religious and these questions came up, that's when the doubts started coming. I've been asked that question many times, and I'm never given an answer to one particular point or one particular book. I always say that there was so much that eventually it just became too much for me to still say I was Sunni. Everything just got together, and there wasn't one thing, there was a lot of things like interpretation of history, the books of prophetic narrations, translation and interpretation of the Quran. So when everything came together, that's when I actually realized I couldn't really call myself Sunni any longer. In Oslo, we have there's a big Muslim community actually, and there's several mosques. So when I lived in Oslo, I was young, but there was a lot of Muslims, so you always felt the Islamic brotherhood, because there were a lot of Muslims in the class around you. You go to the mosque to read the Quran, so you would always have Muslims around you. However, when I became 10, 11, we moved outside of Oslo to a little part which didn't have any Muslims. So there was a complete change, and when you live in such a community and you're in an age where you ask questions and you're the only Muslim, so you are the only one to answer them, that's when it became difficult, and that's when I felt I actually had to research. Most certainly I would say that move helped me a lot, and I thank my parents for moving, because now when I look back at the place where I used to live, it's kind of a suburb, kind of a ghetto type. You have the criminals there in that area now. So I can, if I think now, I know that had I still lived in that area, most probably I would have maybe become a criminal myself. So by moving, they helped me becoming a better person and also helped me with researching and coming to what I understand as the truth. Actually, I wanted to become a doctor, so I wanted to study medicine before I even thought about Islamic college. However, I had a friend who studied at Islamic college, and he told me about the opportunities with a degree in Islam. And as Islamic college is an academic institute, and the degree is validated by Middlesex University, I thought it would be a good opportunity for me to get my Islamic knowledge from a institute which I also could use in the future. So what led me to the Islamic college was the idea that it was an academic institute. I knew it was run by Shias. However, that didn't affect me because talking to the students that was already there, they told me that the BA degree was very much, you wouldn't know that the teacher was Shia or it was run by Shia, because it's basically from a very neutral point of view. What happened is that at 16, when I became very interested in Islam, I told my parents that I think I want to do some Islamic studies, maybe in the Middle East. So my parents didn't want me to go to Middle East or even go outside of Norway. So they told me that you have so many scholars who have 2 degrees, for example, one in medicine and one in Islam. So why don't you do that? Do first something in medicine, then go and study Islam later on. And that seemed like a good idea at the time. However, and actually I even applied and started giving tests to see if my scores were good enough, etc. And but then I learned of Islamic college and the opportunity I would have after a degree in Islam. And I discussed it with my parents, and I told them about the opportunities. I told them that if I just concentrate on Islam and make a life out of studying Islam, eventually get a PhD in Islam, I would have very good opportunities, especially in Norway, as we don't have anyone with a PhD in Islam. Naturally, they had follow-up questions, but in most cases, I feel I was able to give an answer that was satisfying enough for that time, for our age, because I wasn't really discussing with learned people. So if I gave a basic answer, they would accept it. And also I think since they weren't Muslim themselves, or the interest in Islam wasn't very high, they would just accept my answer and not really care about it. I remember being invited to parties and being offered, for example, drugs or alcohol. All these things were around me, and I could easily have joined in these activities. However, we had a family structure and a very strong bond in the family that never actually allowed me to start with alcohol or partying or girls. This was, of course, before I was religious. So when I turned religious, I got even more reason to stay away from these things, because then I learned that how and why Islam doesn't allow these things. we have some close friends who are Shias, so I knew there existed something called Shia Islam. However, in the beginning, I didn't really know. I just knew there was some people called Shia. Later on, as I think is the case with most Sunnis, I became fed with this thought that Shias are wrong and Sunnis are right. It was just automatically what I was being told. And as I discussed these ideas with my Shia friends, that, okay, I've been told this about you, is this correct? Or as I started researching this into, for example, people telling me that Shias give Ali certain rights above the Prophet. And when you actually read a book on belief by a Shia, like Al-mostabserin-The, you never come across this idea. So that's when I started questioning everything I knew about Shia Islam, everything I was being fed to believe. Certainly the fact that when you're living in a Western society and Islam started becoming known in the media and people had questions. And I lived in a part of Norway that I think I was the only Muslim at my school. So when people had questions, they would ask me, even the teachers. Even I remember in my classes of religion in A levels, the teacher would actually ask me questions about Islam. So, and when I didn't have the answer, I naturally felt ashamed, and people also got a very negative picture of Islam when Muslims themselves couldn't answer. So that's what made me actually start research and start read and become more religious. Okay, so as all these questions came up, I had to find some answers, because usually I said that I don't remember or I don't know, so let me give you the answer tomorrow or next week. That's what I usually said. And then I went home, started reading articles or books online, as well as fatwas by different people, and started looking at lectures. I never actually went to the mosque to ask questions, because I knew that the imams in the mosque, they don't have this type of knowledge. They can tell you how to pray, but they can't tell you really why to pray. So that was the problem. That's why I didn't really go to the mosque. So from the very beginning, I had to actually research on my own. There was no one, especially living in Norway, you don't have any real scholars. You have these imams or prayer leaders, etc., but you don't have any real scholars, for example, as you have in London. So that made me research everything on my own. When I first came to London, I felt freedom, because naturally I was 18 years old, and you just come to another country, you're on your own, you have this freedom, there's no one to control you. So I was happy in the beginning, and I started at Islamic college. It was a whole new experience, and I really enjoyed it. But after a while, you start missing your old life, you start missing your family, your friends. So I would say in the first couple of months, it was a really good experience. However, as the months passed, the time passed, it became a bit slow, it became a bit boring. I really wanted to go back, but the idea that I want to make a career out of studying Islam, that kept me going forward. So I always had, and of course my family supported me from Norway, so I always had something to go forward with. I was once told that as Shia Islam is based on the love for Ahlul Bayt. One scholar once told me that the love for Ahlul Bayt is only given to a selected few. So those who receive it, they should appreciate it and be thankful. So certainly, I would say I feel some sort of selection that God, I don't know, maybe He saw some capability in me, that I could help Shia Islam in some way, I could help Islam in the West in some way, and therefore He picked me. But certainly I would say, yes, I feel that I was picked in some way or another. What happened is that I was reading a book, and I was at home reading a book on Shia Sunni discussions. And I was
sitting. Do you remember the book? Do you know what book it was?
I think it was Murajaat. Yes, I think it was Murajaat. And I was sitting in my room alone and reading the book, and I just finished the book, and I was just sitting there thinking that if I still don't become a Shia, then I am really a hypocrite, because in my mind I have accepted everything that is Shia Islam. So the only right thing is to actually become a Shia, to actually call myself Shia now. So I remember that very clearly, because my room was in the second floor. So I accepted that in my mind. I came down, and my friend was downstairs, and I told him, you know what? Today I am Shia. So that I remember very clearly. Now after that, what I did was, as I had accepted the belief, I now started reading about the method of prayer and the practice of a Shia. That's what was the next step for me. I had friends who were Shia. However, when I started researching, I made up my mind that I wouldn't get influenced by anyone. I wouldn't get influenced by any of my friends or by any scholars. I would keep a natural view and always look at both sides of the argument before I decided. And so I always did my own research, and I can't actually remember referring to any scholars or any of my friends. I always went and read the books myself or researched online. And when I was in doubt, I always used the Quran as my sort of scale of what was right and what was wrong. What I would say had the biggest impact is the books of narration used by the Sunnis. Now, you have, for example, the Sahih of Bukhari. But the Sunnis believe that this is 100% authentic. When I started my research, I started finding faults with the book, with some of the narrations. Some of them didn't make sense. Some of them went against the Quran. So this had a big impact on me, because now the book that the Sunnis use for almost every part of the religion, it's not as authentic as they want it to be. So then what is your belief based on? On weak traditions? That was something I couldn't accept. That had a big impact on me, as well as the fact that the position of the Ahlul Bayt, the Sunnis of course respect them, but I felt that the real position of Ahlul Bayt, as they deserve, is not given in Sunni Islam. So that also affected me a lot, because there is an order from God to love them, to respect them, to give them this high position. And I felt that it was only in Shia Islam I found that they really got their true position. So these two things were mainly what affected me, I would say. In terms of friends and people I used to be with, there was a change. I started slowly distancing myself from certain people that I knew could harm my future or harm the path I was going on. There was certain other people, like more religious people, that I would start hanging out more with. Other than that, I can't say I really changed very much. I was just as active in school, just as active with my good friends, just as active with my family and work, etc., etc. There wasn't really much change other than just distancing myself from certain people. I have a very close friend who is also Shia, and I very often discuss with him about the impact of different characters in Islam, different personalities, and I always tell him that there are 3 personalities that affected me the most and still affect me. Those are firstly Prophet Muhammad, Imam Ali, and Sayyidah Fatima Zahra. These 3 personalities affected me the most, and really they are, I would call them my the best personalities within history, because of what they did, what they taught us, and really their characteristics, their morality, their lessons. So certainly Prophet Muhammad, Imam Ali, and Sayyidah Fatima, these 3 other personalities I look to learn from.